Welcome to the Hot Cage Podcast presented by Cage Wall. This is the podcast for April 19th, 2013. On this episode of the Hot Cage Podcast, the topics we will discuss include but are not limited to the Matt Mitrione suspension, GSP gets to pick his poison, Mousasi moving to middleweight potentially, and much more. I am John Franklin, and let's start this podcast the same way we start them all by welcoming in my tag team partner, as always, TJ Craig. TJ, how you doing?
Man, John, I'm doing great. Ready for some fights this weekend. I started tonight watching some, and gonna finish it off with tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's a fight week. It's a big week, as always. I mean, this has been a huge month. We're going to talk about some things that went down this month, but yeah, it's a really big month. A lot of things that are going to shape kind of the way the UFC may be in the next couple of months, or next couple of years are going to happen this month. So it's really exciting. Let's get right into the flurry. All right, first up in the flurry, we're going to talk about Matt Mitrione. He was fined and suspended by the UFC for his comments about Fallon Fox. Let me get your thoughts on first his comments and then this fine and suspension.
Yeah, I talked about this a little bit on our last podcast, and you know it's kind of disgusting when you're a pro athlete and fighting for an organization like the UFC, and then you come out and make statements like that. It was embarrassing to himself, to his family, and to the organization he's fighting in. You know, when you're set to a higher standard of being a pro athlete, you definitely have to be careful of what you say and how you portray it. You know, there's nothing wrong with having your own opinion, but you touch on it, you don't do it out of line, and you move on. And obviously, he just couldn't keep his mouth shut about it and said some things that were unfavorable. So, you know, he gets what he deserves.
I agree. Well, you know, there's two sides to the coin here, and I think that you and Jason kind of touched on it a little bit. I guess my question for you would be, so I guess what he was really coming down on Mitrione about, or on Fallon Fox about, was that she was disingenuous in her past and is kind of putting people at risk. Now, some of the things that he said were, you know, there was some pretty rough language he used to do it, but I don't know that he was saying that he had that problem with the fact that she was transgender, or that he just disliked the fact that she was disingenuous. So I'll ask you two questions kind of as a follow-up. Do you see kind of where he was going and he just used a poor choice of words? And also, why do fighters continue to take the Fallon Fox bait? Fallon Fox really doesn't have shit to do with them, and they seem to keep taking the bait. Why?
Yeah, for the first question, he definitely made a poor choice of selecting his words. You know, I think he was trying to get a point, which is fine. You know, you don't have to agree with it, but it's definitely, you have to watch how you pursue it and the way the media is going to take it and run with it, because you know, today anything you say something and they're just going to run with it, gets twisted. You know, 10 people down the line, you know, you said things you were trying to say just come way out of context. But he obviously, I mean, it shows that he didn't have the right choice of words, and when he said that, it was bad for business. The second question is, I don't know why they keep taking the bait. You know, I don't know if anybody's ever heard, but there's a little thing you can say is that's no comment. Obviously, the Fallon's not in the UFC. It has nothing to do with him. You know, it's just this one case, and it's just like, you know, it's like a new slice of bread's coming out. Everybody wants a piece of it, right? So, you know, if it's smart, you probably should just say no comment. You should move on. It has nothing to do with the UFC. It has to do with fighting, but you know, it's nobody's business if she's in Florida fighting and getting selected there to do it. So, you know, no comment, move on.
You know, props to Dana White, because he did his usual scrum with the media, and when the subject came up, he was really smart about it, because I was kind of tweeting with Larry Pepe today of Pro MMA Now. We were talking about it a little bit, because I think that Invicta is really going to be the one that causes a problem for the UFC, because Invicta lets her fight, then the UFC is going to maybe potentially, you know, because Invicta and UFC are on some level in bed. I think it may be a problem, but what Dana White said that I thought was a great way to handle it is he goes, I'm not smart enough to figure it out. I'm going to leave it up to the commissions. And at the end of the day, that's what you got to do. If she's commissioned to fight in Nevada, then she fights in Nevada. But in terms of Mitrione, I think that Dana's walking a real thin line with how and who he disciplines, because Rousey wasn't disciplined, Rogan wasn't disciplined. Matt Hughes called Fallon Fox an it, for Christ's sakes, and he wasn't disciplined. So you got to be careful that you can't just pick and choose that, well, Mitrione's a top 20 guy, so I'm going to discipline him. Ronda Rousey's my champ, so I won't. So anyway, I think we've kind of covered it, but I'd be real interested to see if Fallon Fox becomes a relevant person in either Invicta or UFC moving forward. And if she continues to beat the shit out of those girls that are willing to fight her, she just may be. All right, up next in the flurry, we're going to talk about Georges St. Pierre. Dana White has come out and told GSP that he has a choice of his next opponent. It was said on the media day. He has a choice. His next opponent can either be Anderson Silva or Johny Hendricks, which may be bad news for Johny Hendricks. But what do you think? I have a theory as to why Dana White did this, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it.
It's right about that time where both the GSP. Well, first of all, let's say this, because GSP's guy came out and said that he's going to retire pretty quick. So he's only got a couple of fights left. So you got to get him to that big payday. And it's good on both sides for Silva and GSP if you do that. And I'm not a fan of this fight. I don't think it's a good matchup personally, and I'm not a fan of it. But in saying that, it's a payday, it's a sellout, and you could probably sell out a big ass stadium like Dallas, like the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, and both of those guys could be set for a very, very long time with it. And the UFC, it brings more money into that organization. So I think he's looking at it as he has a prime time right now for both of them to enter the octagon and get paid on it, because I don't think 2 or 3 fights down the road is just not going to be there. So it's going to have to be in the next 2 fights.
Well, what it tells me is that the UFC has a lot of, to face the word, but they believe in Johny Hendricks and his ability to defeat GSP, because they're going to go back to the table again with GSP and say, hey, before you take on this kid Hendricks, who we feel is the real deal, and who could take your belt from you and potentially be the reason why a fight with Anderson Silva would disappear, why don't you fight Silva? Why don't you make that money? You fight Silva, the Hendricks fight's always there, even if you lose to Silva. And if you're going to lose and have your legacy diminished by anybody, why not let it be Anderson Silva and not Johny Hendricks? So I think from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense for GSP. If I was GSP, I would actually knock around the idea of vacating the 170-pound belt, let those guys, do what they got to do, and come back and maybe regain it. Take a shot at Anderson Silva, make your money while you can, and he's not hurting for money. He's gonna get paid if he fights Johny Hendricks, but I just think that Johny Hendricks is the real deal. He has everything that you would need to defeat GSP. And like I said, if you're going to have your legacy fucked by anybody, why not let it be Anderson Silva as opposed to Johny Hendricks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is the real deal, and I think there is, because GSP's been knocked out before, he has that left hand and even the right hand. You catch him on a good shot, man, it could be a good night for him. So I think you might be right. He might be the real deal. So they're looking at the next fight, and they want to get paid. They want an all-win situation for all 3 of them, UFC, GSP, and Silva. So, and there's no time to do it now because both of their stocks are really up. So, they've been up, but if you wait too long, then it's going to fall a little bit because you have newcomers coming up, and it's going to be one of those fights that should have been and what ifs. So take out the what ifs and put them in the octagon together. But again, not a big fan of the fight, but it's going to make money, so they're going to do it.
Yeah, and not to compare Johny Hendricks and Matt Serra, because I really think they're 2 different fighters. But what they do have that's similar is they're both shorter than GSP and they're both southpaws. So and they both have heavy hands. So from that perspective, that could be the recipe to defeat GSP. So again, if I'm GSP, I just go ahead and take the Silva money. You're going to lose to somebody, might as well be Anderson Silva, right? So yeah. I say you just move on, take the big payday, and then let Roy McDonald and Ellenberger and even Condit and Hendricks, let those 4 guys figure out the 70-pound division, and then when you're all done with Anderson Silva, you come back and do what you got to do. All right, up next in the flurry, let's talk about the fight next weekend. It is Chael Sonnen and Jon Jones. Dana White said in his media scrum that he feels like Chael Sonnen is in Jon Jones' head. I actually tweeted this out. I think that Chael did a great job of mind games, and I think he gave Jones the okie doke and kind of, you think I'm gonna go on the Ultimate Fighter and talk a bunch of shit to you, and he played nice with him, and now Jones is even more confused. Now, in saying that, I think that Chael kind of did the public a disservice because everybody was tuning into Tough 17 for that reason. And at the end of the day, I think Uriah Hall probably saved Chael's ass because he talked all that shit beforehand and then didn't do any of it during the season. So if not for Uriah Hall and us wanting to see what he was going to do next, I think the season would have largely been a failure. So do you think Chael is in Jones's head, and do you think it's going to affect the fight?
No, I don't think he's in his head, really. I mean, Jon Jones has gone through a lot of stuff in the last couple of years, with the DUI, wrecking the car, making some unfavorable statements as himself. And I think he's growing up a little bit, and I don't really think he's in his head. I think I think Chael earned Jon Jones' respect as a person because when he went on there and coached, he really showed his professionalism as a person of MMA, as a coach, and that he really loves the sport. And I think that kind of caught him off guard a little bit. But now instead of the shit talking, it's just more like he knows what he's going to do. He's going to talk his good game. He talked his way into this fight, and we're going to fight. So, and he's just not baiting into it. So, and I think before, if the show wouldn't have happened, Jon Jones would have been coming back with stuff and probably tweeting some stuff and coming back at him. But now that they've known each other and they kind of coached, I mean, they really look like they respected each other. So now it's just a little different. And now he knows who Chael is. He has a little bit more respect for him, and he knows he's going to talk his shit. But Jon Jones ultimately is going to go in the ring, and instead of talking shit, he's going to go in there and fight.
Yeah, and this week a few things have happened. Jon Jones said that Chael Sonnen is a lifelong steroid user and then apologized for it on Twitter. There's just been some interesting things that have kind of gone back and forth between the two of them. I think that, and I'll get to this a little bit later on when we talk about the Tough 17 finale, but I think that what Jon Jones does, probably only him and GSP are the two that do this the best in the UFC. And what that is I think that Jon Jones is better than anyone else. This is what I think he's doing right now. I don't think he's mad at Chael. I don't think any of that. I think that all this is coming out of that interview they did on the Tough 17 finale where Jones seemed pissed off and Chael was, running his bullshit. And I think what it is what Jon Jones does better than anyone else in the UFC is he peaks physically and mentally at the same time. Yeah. And a lot of guys can't do that. Frank Mir's one. I wrote that in an article for Cage Wall. I think that Frank Mir has trouble peaking mentally. Some guys get up for a fight way before they're going to fight the fight. But Jon Jones, he meditates, he visualizes. I think all this is part of just narrowing his focus on Chael Sonnen, cutting out all the bullshit and going, this is the guy. Again, he said on either in an interview or on Twitter, he said, Chael Sonnen is in the promoting fight game, and I'm in the staying champion game. So that's kind of what he's doing now. He's just saying, I don't have to play this bullshit game with Chael Sonnen. We're not on the show anymore. We don't have to go back and forth. This is my opponent, and I'm going to treat him as such. So the other thing that was kind of catching some hell on Twitter was when I talked to Adam Martin about this. He was saying it's interesting that there's such a huge fights next week and no one's really talking about it. And what I attributed that to was that I think everybody thinks it's a foregone conclusion that Jones is going to win. And everybody's kind of getting a little bit tired of, Chael's act. So what do you think about everything I just said?
That's a lot that you just threw at me, by the way. So,
I know.
So basically, first, you don't ever pull that cup to your mouth again and put it in the screenshot since this is the New York Giants. Let's just go there for one. So
okay.
No, I think it is. Jon Jones is a different kind of breed. He, like you said, he meditates, he visualizes, like he sees things differently, and I think that's what makes him a true champion. That he can step everything aside, he can put everything aside, and he can concentrate exactly what he's doing. And not too many people can do that. GSP has learned to do that after his loss. He's really came together. So in next week's pay-per-view, it's probably, yes. It's most people think that Jon Jones is probably going to run right through Chael because of what Henderson Silva did to him. So I don't think people really are looking into it because that's going to be the outcome in their eyes. We could be surprised and really see Chael, at 205 and see his wrestling skills and really get challenge Jon on the wrestling front or whatever. But right now it was kind of a letdown because of for fans that that are into that, it's going to be a letdown because tough 17 there wasn't a lot of shit talking. Uh, you know, Chael saying some shit, but Jon Jones isn't really engaging, so it's not making for a hype fight, which is a shame because I'm looking forward to that fight. But I think it goes back to Jones himself. You know, it's just he's not getting in, like he said, he's not in the promoting fight business. You know, he's there to win the championship and keep his championship around his waist. So that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, well, I guess my question to you is, do you think Chael did the UFC a disservice by selling fans a bill of goods of what they were going to get on Tough 17 and then never really delivered?
No, I don't think he just said it was going to be a great season, that there was some great fights. I don't think he ever really hinted to of all the shit talking and it was going to get in his face. He never really. We thought that you bought the tickets, and I'm saying you as in general, that you thought that was what he was going to do because of what he's done in the past. And I think it blew everybody's mind. Was like, shit, where's the Chael that talks all this shit? Well, you know, that's what he does when he's trying to fight, get a fight, or when he's fighting somebody. But as we see him in the back, just like when they were doing the interviews with him in his camp, you know, he wasn't really talking shit. He stays focused when he's coaching and when he's training, and that's who he is, and then that's what he portrayed in the show. So I think everybody bought into this just because of what he does to get a fight or when he was trying to sell a fight.
So I guess that my question is, and we got to move on, but my question with Chael is, do you think that fans are starting to kind of turn away a little bit from him? Because MMA fans are very good for, and I'm a perfect example of this, kind of rejecting the pro wrestling aspect of things. They really like that separation of church and state, if you will, when it comes to MMA and pro wrestling. So although there are some similarities, you know, there are some things where but do you think that's what they're starting to dislike about Chael? He talks a bunch of shit, and when he had the opportunity to truly back it up on Tough 17, they think that they see this guy that's a good coach and a good guy. They're like, well, who's this guy talking all this shit? It seems disingenuous, right?
Well, didn't he back it up on Tough 17? Didn't he win? Didn't he have 2 guys in the championship?
No, I mean the shit talking.
Yeah.
The bravado, the silliness, like, you know what I'm saying? All that bombastic shit talking, he kind of goes away from. In fairness, now listen. In fairness, I'll say this to the people that are opponents of Chael's, as far as, you know, his personality. He doesn't do a whole lot of shit talking when the guys are around, and he's had opportunities. You know, he does a lot of shit talking when no one's around, and not so much when they are around. Perfect example, when he was in that van with Vanderlei Silva, didn't really say too much. Talked a big game around Anderson Silva. Didn't talk a lot of shit around him. Around Jon Jones, doesn't talk a lot of shit. So I mean, do you think MMA fans are starting to kind of go, okay, I see what this, and they're feeling manipulated by him in a sense?
No, I don't. You know, I think that's what everybody wanted. Everybody tuned in because they wanted to see him shit talk. And that would be bringing the pro wrestling aspect to it when you're tuning in for that. But, I mean, he didn't do that. And what did save that season was there was a rash of good – every week there was a good fight on that show. And if you noticed, they showed more about the fighters and the fights than they really did of Chael and Jon Jones during the whole Tough 17. It was basically taped around – getting to know the fighters a little bit better, and then the fights in a whole. It was the last 30 minutes was mostly just the fights, and so I think they portrayed it really well because I think they knew when Chael was coming in that it wasn't going to be like that. They were cordial with each other, so they took that route, and I think fans themselves wanted to see that and didn't. And if they get tired of that, you know, I guess that's your opinion, because if you're a true fan, I think you would have gone more respect for Chael for what he did in the show than he did of a shit talking.
That's true. All right, let's move on. One other thing I do want to say is that I gave props to Jones and GSP for being guys that kind of peak physically and mentally at the same time. I'd also like to give props to Ben Henderson because I think he does the same thing. So, all right, moving on to the next subject on the flurry. We're going to talk about Gegard Mousasi, who just was victorious, had a knee injury, and fought anyway. Fought Alira Latifi, was supposed to fight Alexander Gustafsson. That fell apart. But, you know, he won out over Latifi. There's talk of him going to middleweight. So what are your thoughts on Mousasi going to middleweight? And do you think this is kind of down the road since he's dealing with his knee injury now? Or would you prefer to see him at 205 or 85?
I would like to stay at 205. I think he has a lot to show to the MMA fans and to himself. This is one of those guys that has the world of potential. I mean, we've been seeing the fight. He's been in Dream. We've seen him in some other organizations, and we've always talked about this. He could be one of the best MMA fighters out there, but he's one of the ones. He shows up comparable to his opponent. I think he should stay at 205 because I think he has some proven there at 205. I think he's a tough competitor at 205. And if he drops down, he could probably be a tough competitor either weight class, but I'd rather see him at 205 because I think, honestly, he can give Jon Jones a run for his money. That's just me, but I really do.
Well, yeah, he does really have kind of the skill set to do it. He's a very accurate puncher, and when you're a very accurate puncher like he is, guys get cut, their eyes swell, and once you can get to someone's face and make cut him and make him swell, it changes the whole dynamic of the fight. And I think he can get to Jon Jones' face. I think he can score, and I think that he would change the way that Jones fought. I think Jones would go he would get away from the striking early. He would start to grapple with him. So I think that part of this has to do with the fact that when Gegard was in Strikeforce, there was such a shallow talent pool that you got to go from 205 to 85 just to find relevant fights. 1 minute you're fighting King Mo potentially, and then maybe it's Rockhold. You just have to move around to find the right fights for you to make money, to bring interest and eyeballs to the TV set when Strikeforce is on. So I'm with you. I mean, the guy fought at 205. I think that just because Gustafsson fell out doesn't mean you don't have unfinished business with the guy. You were supposed to fight him. Why not still fight him? There's other guys in the division that you can fight. I don't think that, had you fought Gustafsson and won or shown well, would you stay at 205? Yeah, probably. So I think that that's where he's got the most, future ahead of him. So, yeah, I'd like to see him stick at 205 just like you. All right, moving on. Let's get to today is 419. Tomorrow is 420. And in honor of 420, we're going to talk about Josh Rosenthal. Josh Rosenthal had quite a racket going for himself. Apparently, he owned a warehouse, and him and a friend of his had quite a lot of marijuana plants they were growing. So, when Dana White was asked about this by Karen Bryant, he said, "Wow, that was it." About 30 times, he said, "Wow," and I really can't expound too much on that. What does this make you think about Rosenthal as a referee? Does it affect it at all? And, how do we move forward with this?
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. 1 million worth of marijuana in that warehouse. I think it was like 1.8 something. Hell, I don't know. It was over $1 million. That's all that matters. That's a shitload of marijuana in a warehouse. And, as a referee, people make stupid mistakes, but that's just a huge one. And I don't even know how to comment on this. What an idiot. You're a referee for MMA. You got commission. I just don't even know what to say, honestly. That it's just stupid. What was he thinking? I don't even know what the fuck he was thinking. Like, he wasn't going to get caught in a warehouse? Really? Like, the decision making is just horrible. So, and as a referee, I thought he was a decent referee, but now I'm surprised nobody has said, what if this guy's high? How do we know this guy wasn't high calling fights? Because
right.
that puts everything, early stops, whatever. I'm surprised nobody has said anything about that, because wouldn't that bring up, well, should they just, every fight that he's called be a no decision, or because he could have been on drugs, or are they testing him for drugs? There's a lot to play in that, and I don't even know if we even should touch on it, because we could go fucking for days on that. But stupid move. He's gonna pay the price, for some ungodly reason he's found innocent, or if you find out that he has nothing to do with it, would be better, because I think he is a good ref, but it's a hit that he's probably not ever gonna rebound from, and he's gonna probably see some some jail time. So we won't see him for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know shit about the law. I dropped out of law school right before drug charges. But so I think that maybe it's got to be a felony, right? I mean, that's obvious.
That's
but yeah, but I guess my question is, it's funny because the story comes out. You go, hey, Josh Rosenthal is a referee who kind of had a little drug ring on the side. Actually, I think Josh Rosenthal is a drug dealer who had some refereeing on the side. Because if you have that much weed, I would say your focus is the weed and you do the repping on the side. Yeah. I don't think your focus is the repping and you do the weed on the side. Yeah. So I think for him, he just kind of, I mean, yeah, of course you don't get caught. I don't know how you don't think the warehouse will get caught. But I don't know, man. I just think that, like you said, I don't think that if he's doing smoking weed, I don't think there's going to be early stoppages. I think it's probably going to be late stoppages. So I don't know, man. I don't really know what to make of this. I think that he was, if we're going top 5, he's probably a top 5 ref. So it's unfortunate. Yeah. It's unfortunate that we lost him because there's not a lot of great ones. You kind of wish that either Kim Winslow or Steve Mazzagatti had a drug ring, so they would have got their asses kicked out. But they didn't. So we lost Rosenthal in this one. But again, it's unfortunate. I think that because he's in the public eye, maybe we kind of are making him out to be more than he actually is. He can't be getting paid that much. I don't know that he threw away some super successful career here to potentially do drugs. He probably doesn't make a shit ton of money, and he's a pothead, so he's growing weed and trying to sell it. So I don't know, man. It's unfortunate for us because he was a good ref, but I don't think, like I said, I don't think that he was like. I don't think he threw away a 6-figure career as a referee here. I think that he probably makes some good money, but I don't know. Anyway, already on Middle Easy, I saw they have free Josh Rosenthal T-shirts. So if anybody wants to pick those up, you can find them at middleeasy.com. Good luck with that. All right, let's move on. Next up in the flurry, we're going to talk about Tough 17. It was a tale of 2 Uriahs. One lived up to the hype and one didn't. We'll get to that. So the main event was the first Uriah Faber fought a good friend of his, Scott Jurgensen. First bit of business I'd like to get to is, at what age do you stop calling someone young guns? I know you touched on this with Jason Cruz. Scott Jurgensen is, what is he, 30? 28?
Yeah.
Do you think he's too old to be called young guns?
Probably.
All right. Well, then
yeah, it's probably a little bit. It's a nickname that sticks with you, but like you said, young guns. That's what you're talking about. Somebody coming out and hungry, and that's ready to get fired up, and we've seen Scott for a while. So I don't know. You might have to change it.
I say we get rid of young guns. Stop calling BJ the Prodigy and Belfort the Phenom, because they are well past those ages. So we'll get this thing cleaned up. But now back to the fight. Coming into this fight, the big news was that they were friends. Didn't really seem to play too much into the fight. Uriah Faber looked good, and he seems like he's having a renaissance with his jiu-jitsu. So is he just that much better than the guys he's fighting jiu-jitsu-wise? Or is this like an approach he's taking? Maybe he thinks the key to beating Cruz and Barao is his jiu-jitsu? Yeah,
I think so. I think he's really, I think he's taking a look at himself, and he realized that he had to round out his game a little bit more. And like he said, he's always learning. And I think it finally hit him when he's lost those couple, with the fights and the title fight, that he needed to round out his game better and work on some stuff. And we've seen kind of a different Uriah Faber in the ring, and he's looked good, man, really. And not only that did he look good this fight, but he was hurt this fight, was what I'm saying. He had a sternum and a hand injury that came out afterwards. So, and then he put on a show even with that. So it looks like he's touching the different aspects of his game. He's rounding out really good. He's looking good. And like you said, I don't think he's in any rush, man. He loves the fight. He puts on a great show. I mean, I don't care what all the fights. He's never in a boring fight. He always comes to come in there to fight, and he pushes the pace. And right now, I think he's having a good time. I think once, when you're having a good time, things are different. When you're really enjoying it and relaxed in there, you perform different. And I think that's what we've seen him. And I think, he said, "What about a title shot?" And he's like, whatever they want to do, I'm not rushing anything. I'm just having a great time. And I really think that's what he's thinking. He just wants to continue fighting. And I think eventually, if he does this, we probably will see another title shot from him.
Well, but that's the thing. I mean, the question I guess I would ask you is he having a good time because he's not fighting championship caliber fighters and he's better than them? So at this point in his career, is he destined to no longer win title fights, or do you think that if he focuses, like, I guess the real question for me with Uriah Faber is, like I said earlier, is the key to beating Dominic Cruz and Renan Barão to evolve his jiu-jitsu game, because he's never going to beat them on the feet?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, he's got to round out his game. He's got great wrestling, but he's got to be able to, with those guys that are a little bit bigger with him, have longer reach. The kicks are longer, and him being a little bit shorter and not such a long reach, he's got to figure a way to get inside those fighters and take them down and use jiu-jitsu on them and hold them down. Once he gets them down, that's the thing. He's got to be able to hold them down, and I think that's with the jiu-jitsu that he's doing and working even more on his wrestling too. I think that's what he's trying to do, is round out that bottom end of his game. And once he does, we could see him being another force in there.
So you think he's destined for a title shot? You think he's going to get back on track?
Yeah, I think he'll get another title shot. Probably one, maybe two more fights. And the kid's 33. Speaking of the kid, he's 33 years old. I think he looks like a young 33. Like, he doesn't really seem like he's slowing down much. So I think a couple more fights and we'll probably see him in the title shot hunt again. I mean, he's in there right now, but
yeah, I said it before. I'll say it again. I'd love to see him and Frankie Edgar fight at maybe a catchweight of 140. It'd be a hell of a fight.
Yeah, that would
okay.
Be barn burning.
Yeah. Okay. Up next, we're going to talk about the other Uriah Hall. He came into this fight with a lot of hype. Everybody, I mean, they were talking about this guy fighting. Was he going to be? And I bit that Uriah Hall hype sandwich with everything I had, and I had the guy. All this talk about top 10 fighters and all that stuff. I mean, I don't know if I had him top 10, but I really was asking you and anybody that I was talking to, is he better than Alan Belcher, the number 10 ranked middleweight? So my question to you is a few. First off, were we wrong about Uriah Hall, or were we wrong about Kelvin Gastelum?
Listen, first of all, if you watched my last podcast, I just want to apologize to everybody for taking the fucking bait and look like a goddamn moron. And we're all better than that. But yet, when everybody's talking, you kind of get in the hype and you see him fight and you start believing himself. And then Dana's hyping him up, and it was a victim. I mean, these guys are tough finalists, or even in the house, they're just tough fighters. And I think we did. I think we bit off a bigger chunk than we could chew. So, I fell victim to it. I don't know if he's not in the top 10, because I think he has a lot of learning, and we saw that in the tough finale. His head wasn't there. I mean, it didn't seem like he was hungry. He was dropping his hands. He was taking punches like he's a badass. And, man, that kid has a lot of after that fight, that kid has a lot of maturing to do. Do I think his talent's there? Yeah, I think he has great talent. But he has a lot of growing up to do, especially after that tough finale.
Well, two things I'll say about the fight that I kind of want to focus on with him is, a lot of people, again, I talked to Larry Pepe of Pro MMA now. He had the fight for Hall. He gave him the second and the third. So it wasn't this runaway fight that people like to say. I mean, I think most people would give him the second. The third's up in the air. So, had he got the second and the third on all the judges' cards, are we having a different conversation? Maybe. My other thing is, I think that, honestly, having Chael Sonnen as a coach did him a disservice, because Chael Sonnen is a lot of things. One thing Chael Sonnen is not a winner. And another thing Chael Sonnen is not a championship level winner. And another thing Chael Sonnen is not a super talented guy. He's a hard worker. Okay? But I think for Uriah Hall, he would have been better served having Jon Jones as a coach and just talking to him about mentally preparing, living up to hype, using what you have to the best of your abilities and really being a talented guy and knowing how to. Now, I don't know if Jon Jones could have conveyed that, because a lot of times they say with, great athletes don't make great coaches. Michael Jordan wasn't a great coach, or isn't a great owner, but wouldn't have been a great coach, most believe, because they can't explain how to do what it is they do. But I think that Jon Jones would have been a better mentor for Uriah Hall than Chael Sonnen is. I think, especially when Chael Sonnen said, I think he could beat Anderson Silva, started the hype train going even faster, told him he's a contender right now, he could beat them all, told him, and in the same breath told him it's okay to lose. You shouldn't worry about losing, Uriah. It's not that big of a deal. Well, yeah, this is a guy that's lost in the biggest moments in his career. Of course he's going to say that. Jon Jones doesn't say that. So I think Jon Jones would have been a better mentor for Uriah Hall based on his skill set than Sonnen. But I guess my other point that I want to make, and I'll get your thoughts on this, is why is it that we always are willing to discredit someone else? Like, we have our minds made up. So we thought we knew who Uriah Hall was. We thought we knew who Kelvin Gastelum was. Uriah Hall loses. So instead of saying, wow, this Gastelum kid might be the real deal, he goes to 170, he might be a force. Instead of saying that, we just go, I guess Hall wasn't who we thought he was. Why can't it be that Gastelum just rose to the occasion?
No, it can be, because he did. I mean, the difference in that fight, I think, was heart and who wanted it more. It was obviously. And I'm gonna go back. I don't think that Uriah Hall having Chael Sonnen as a coach disserviced him at all, because he during that whole tough, we saw a different guy than what we saw in the tough finale. We saw a guy that was in there and that was whooping some ass and just wasn't taking anything for granted. He just let it all out there. And then tough finale, or the tough show ends, and he comes back for the finale, and he's a totally different guy. He doesn't.
Well, hold on. Let me get in here, because this is what I'm saying. I agree with you. I am 100% in agreement with you that Chael Sonnen is a good coach. All right, so I don't want that to be what I'm saying here. What I'm saying to you is all the damage that Uriah Hall did during a tough finale was in empty gyms. No one was around, no hype really, just other fighters watching. The first time he was in a really, really big spot, the biggest spot of his life. That's where Jon Jones could have helped him. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that Sonnen wasn't a good coach. I'm just saying that Jon Jones, Ronda Rousey, GSP, people that have to show up big in big spots or have shown an ability to do so, that's the guys that need to help Uriah Hall with his mental game, not Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen is a guy who overachieves.
Yeah, but you're talking about a guy that went back to I think it's Team Tiger or whatever it is, association. So, I mean, I don't even know if Chael was an implemented part in his tough finale performance, because the show ended and usually people go back to their home camp.
So, yeah, that's true.
So, the point is, yeah, he didn't show up for the fight. It wasn't the Uriah Hall that we saw in the tough during the season. And Kelvin, I mean, he brought his, I think he has some work to do too, but he was the one that wanted it more. He came in there and he dictated, and that's why I gave him the first and the third, because the third round too, I think he did enough to win it, because he came forward and he was still, looks like he wanted it more than Uriah Hall. The whole hands dropping against the fins and letting you hit me kind of bullshit just doesn't turn me on that much. It doesn't. It just shows that you're getting beat up, is what that's telling me. So, Kelvin brought his game and ended up winning, and I think the right person won.
So what's next for these guys? Do you see there's a lot of talk of Kelvin moving to 170. I like him there. Kelvin really reminds me a lot of Diego Sanchez. He fought at a higher weight when he won the Ultimate Fighter. They push a high pace. They both have fairly good hands. They remind me of each other. I don't think they have the exact same game, but listen, Kelvin's from Yuma, so a lot of people make comparisons to him and Cain Velasquez, who's also from Yuma. I see that too. I see the pace being pushed. Kelvin's a real physical guy. I just think that, like I said, what do you think's next for the two of these guys?
Well, Kelvin, he could probably drop to 170 and be okay. He's only 5'9", and he's kind of a bigger boy anyway, so I don't know how hard it would be him to drop to 170. He would have to drop some of that muscle that he has to get there, and I don't know how that would affect his game. but I think he could probably be a force at 170. If he stays at 186, he's just going to have to climb the train. We're talking about the tough winners. How long is it until they become relevant? And that's about 2 years. So, if he stays at 185, you just coach him and you bring him up and see how he does on his next fight, and you go from there. Uriah Hall, he's got to start pretty much at the bottom. He didn't perform that well. He didn't look that great. So, you got to throw him in there one more time and give him a warm up, see how he's going to react after this loss, because again, that's a mental thing. So you start these guys kind of over and you build them up, and you can build them up pretty much the same. Just because Kelvin won and Uriah lost doesn't mean you really bring them up any different, because I think both of them still need to work on different aspects of their games.
You think Uriah Hall will be well suited by a change of camp?
Probably. He needs somebody that has experience in the mental side of things too, because we saw during the show, he has a lot of, I wouldn't call them demons, but I think he has a past that he carries a lot of weight on. So I think he needs the changing camps might be good for him if he can find the coaching and the support system of building his game along with his middle game at the same time.
Sounds like Jackson's to me. If I was that kid, I'd book the next flight to Albuquerque.
Yeah.
I really think they would serve him well. I don't think that Uriah Hall has a lot of demons necessarily. I just think that Uriah Hall thinks too much about shit he doesn't need to think about. He just worries too much about, because a lot of fighters think. I would say the same thing about Frank Mir. I mean, Frank Mir is an over-analytical guy, and he was the WEC play-by-play guy, for Christ's sakes. So or the color guy. So he thinks. Chael thinks. Jon Jones thinks. A lot of guys think a shitload, but they think it. They put it into good use. Uriah Hall just gets obsessed with shit he doesn't have to worry about. So I think he should go to Jackson's, in all honesty. And that's where Jones trains. All right. Up next, huge fight in the women's division. Kat Zingano defeated Miesha Tate. She will be coaching Tough 18. It was a really, really great fight. It was fight of the night. Let me get your thoughts on this fight.
Man, it was a great fight. Miesha came out and was firing on all cylinders. She really was looking good. And then Alpha, she just kind of, the round came and she started to dominate. She started getting her second win and just dominated until she won. And I think it was definitely a fight of night. There wasn't a dull moment really in that whole fight. They both came to win and they pushed it. And at first I thought Miesha was going to finish her pretty quick, and Kat hung in there, and then in the later rounds, man, Kat took over with those vicious knees, worked some ground too on it, and the punches when she stood up with the elbows. Man, it was a phenomenal fight. There wasn't no loser. I mean, there was, but there wasn't really no loser because that fight was just great for the fans. And man, women's MMA. I told you a long time ago that women's MMA is going to be right up there, and definitely with the fights we've seen lately, that shit has been proven out. It's looking good. I think we're going to see some more with this women's fighters, and I think it's just going to be just as dominant.
Well, the commonality we're seeing amongst certain fighters in UFC is this: when you feel like you have something to prove, you come in really, really fighting hard. WEC did it. Strikeforce is doing it now, and now the women's division. So, Kat looked great. I think that this is the first of two, not chronologically, but that we're going to talk about, fights that were kind of marred in some controversy. A lot of people are saying it was an early stop. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think it was an early stop at all. I think Miesha Tate was hurt, and she was catching some knees and some punches and elbows that were really hurting her. But I give it up, man. That's a fucking. She didn't get knocked out, and she was coming at it. But I think she took enough. She took enough of a beating where it was a good stoppage.
Well, Zingano said after the fight that when you talk about it, because there was some controversy as to whether Miesha had a hand down on one of the knees. I listened to Ariel Helwani talk about it. He brought up a great point. He said that if you got to watch something 30 times to see if there's a knee, if it's illegal, then you cannot expect a referee to get that right in the moment. If you can't rewatch it 30 times and get it right, then how the hell can they in real time? But I think that Kat says, again, like what I say a lot when it comes to some of these finishes, just because the ref pulled me off at, between punches 3, 4, and 5, doesn't mean 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 weren't coming. So, Kat was, in on the attack when that stopped. And you do have to look out for a fighter's safety, in all honesty. And that's, if it's an early stop, sometimes refs have to side on the, have to side with caution more so than just worrying about, am I giving someone a fair crack at things here? Because you can get somebody hurt. And I think that Misha was done. And I like Kat winning. Again, listen, you know me. I like the Kelvin Gastelum one. I like the Kat Zingano one because I believe that when you have already established quote-unquote stars, which Uriah Hall and Miesha Tate are, whether or not they have the credentials to back them up, they're stars. They have a higher Q rating than their opponents. They have a name behind them. And when their opponents win, now we've created new stars. Kat Zingano is somebody now that she wasn't previously. Miesha Tate's still who she is. You still know who Miesha Tate is. She still has a name. Now Kat Zingano has a name, and her name will expand even more based on her time on Tough and then ultimately fighting Ronda Rousey. So, do you give Kat a chance against Ronda?
Yeah, you got to give her a chance because she's undefeated, but yeah, she got some good stand up, and obviously, yeah, she has endurance because she was getting worked. The first couple of rounds. The second round she started turning around, but the first round she was eating it a little bit. And with Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate, they went for rounds. They went about it too. So yeah, I give her a good chance against Ronda Rousey.
And in all honesty, people do say that one of the holes in Rousey's game is her stand-up. She looked sharp on the mitts, but everybody looks sharp on the mitts. So I think that when I look at Rousey, I just go, it's not so much that she's not a good striker. It's just a matter of that she works for the armbar. She goes for her takedowns. I just think that you could, if you're a good striker, put her under some duress if you start to land. And once you land, it's the old saying. I got my Iron Mike Tyson shirt on today. Part of it, honestly, when I first decided to wear it, it was before the Tough finale, and I was going to wear it for Uriah Hall, just destroying people. And then, honestly, I kept wearing it because Kelvin Gastelum's such a young champion. Maybe it's only Tough, but, he's 21 years old, just like Iron Mike was. But Iron Mike famously said that everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And Ronda Rousey has a plan, and so far that plan's gone great. But she's never really faced adversity. She did a little bit with Liz Carmouche, faced some adversity with Miesha Tate. But, again, no one's really, cracked her jaw, cracked her eye, busted her nose open for her. And when those things happen, we're going to see what she's really made of. I think Kat Zingano could do that.
Yep.
All right, next fight up we're going to talk about also had some controversy in it. Travis Browne defeated Diego Gonzaga with elbow strikes. The word on the street on Twitter and about is that some of those elbow strikes were to the back of the head and illegal. So what are your thoughts on the fight? How do you think Travis Browne looked? And did you think the strikes were illegal?
Yeah, I think there was a couple that were illegal, but I don't think it made a difference because the one that caught him, that dropped him, was right in the side of the head. Yeah, when you're throwing and you're at that angle right there, you're not going to be able to, not hit the back of the head 100% of the time. I don't think there was enough there where it causes, when they go back and we'll call the fight differently. There was a couple, but not enough, I think, to overturn the fight because when he caught him with the good one, it was right in the side of the head. It was a legal blow, and he, said goodnight. So, if they do go back and if they do look at the fight, I don't think they'll overturn it because, again, the first couple and leading up to that knockout, they were all right to the side, so it was good.
Well, do you think sometimes with these fights, and this is going to be, I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist when it comes to MMA. Do you think that this is kind of one of those situations where everybody's kind of like, we're pretty much done with Gonzaga. Brown's a guy we don't mind being on the rise. He's going one way, Gonzaga's going the other. There might have been some illegal blows. We're not going to look into it too much. We don't really care. Do you think it's something like that where it's just no one cares enough about Gonzaga to
overturn it?
Yeah, well, to really make an issue of it.
No, I think it's it's something the refs can learn about. But when you're in the action and it's moving at that fast of a pace, you can't stop everything. You can't see everything. It's just like that Miesha Tate knee. Like you said, if you have to rewind and watch it 30 times, then fucking you let it go, right? I mean, it's not enough that it's going to change anything. And I think that's the same with the blows to the back of the head. If it was blatantly 5, 10, 12 strikes, I remember that one time we saw that it was up there like 10 or 11 strikes that the dude got hit in the back of the head, and they called it. But it wasn't. I don't think it was enough like that. And Gabriel Gonzaga, he got caught, man. It was just like any fight game. Anybody can get caught. And I don't think it's the stature of where he's at in this fight game is as more as, if it was blatantly there that he knocked him out from the back of the head, then yes, I think it would be more to it. But I don't think it was, and I don't think the commission will see it as that either.
Well, I guess this also raises the point of what your thoughts are on having instant replay in MMA. And there's been some talk about it. I'm not crazy about it, and the only reason I'm not crazy about it is what do you do? So you stop the fight, you deem that the blows were illegal based on instant replay. What do you start it up again? I mean, I know in Pride they would stop guys and start guys and move them around. I mean, are you open to that, or now we're stopping and starting fights and guys are? Go ahead.
I'm not open to that at all, because if you're doing it, then what's going to be called if you can't say, okay, well, maybe he stopped the fight too early, and let's go back and look at the fight. Did he stop it too early? Okay, let's get it going again. No, I mean, the ref's right there in the mix, and it's going to have to be a decision. If in the fight game, if you go to instant replay, it's just going to throw everything out of whack, and then you're going to have even more controversy, because you're talking about rest time. People, if somebody had somebody on the ground and you stand them up and have to go to look at the film, then you're taking minutes that these guys get back up to, getting their second breath or whatever it is. I think there's just too much right now. It's just too much, and I don't think you can go that. And I wouldn't want to listen to the talk of instant replay in fighting.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where if you open the door, the sport's not built for instant replay. It's kind of like with the baseball thing, but they say, I mean, they do it some, but it's like, everybody's concerned of like, well, if we're gonna say what's an out, we're gonna use instant replay to determine outs. Well, then do we do it for third strikes? What if it wasn't really a strike? Do we? It just kind of opens this weird box of like where it's how the sport is built. I don't think MMA is built for instant replay.
Yeah, just like football, we're all humans. We make human errors, and we're making extra systems. Or systems as a whole making calls for us. It's our human nature to make mistakes, and if a call is what it is, it has to stand. I mean, we've seen instant replay in the NFL changes the whole game, and I think if you did it in MMA, it would change the whole game of MMA, and it does need to be changed.
Yeah, it's weird how we'll accept human errors from the players, but not from the umpires or the referees. It's like, if somebody does something, it's like why not in baseball, every time you hit a ground ball, you're just out? Because the guy has to field it and throw it. You know what I'm saying? There's human error. So you have to, it's funny that they just think that the refs should be robots and the players can be humans. Yeah. Okay, so up next, we're going to start to get into the business of the main card for this weekend. UFC on Fox 7. They're stacking these cards. They want Fox to be successful. This is another a great card. I do want to get your thoughts on why you think they put certain guys on these cards and certain people they don't. Why do you think? Do you think it's because they feel like they can't carry a pay-per-view, and so then consequently we'll use the Fox vehicle, I guess, to get their name bigger because Benson Henderson is on a lot of these. So why do you think they put certain fighters on Fox?
What I think is you put people on Fox because it's more of a mainstream. People get to, it's your Saturday night Fox Sports. You get fans that aren't even really fans that will run across the channel and stop it. And when you want those people to stop, why do you want them to stop? And that's because you want to see them, have them see exciting fights. Get them initially started in to watching it, and then once they start watching it, then they start buying pay-per-views, which generates money, right? So you see some of these guys that are exciting fighters starting the fights on Fox because those guys can bring in those kind of fans that aren't your casual fan, but maybe your first-time viewer that can actually grab your attention. And you know what? They're good fighters and they're good role models. If you notice, like you've seen guys on these Fox cards that really have their shit together with the media, with their community, and you see them as a whole person, and that's what they're trying to bring. It's they're trying to make it almost, I wouldn't say a family-oriented sport, but it kind of is because you're starting to see a lot younger generations get into karate, to MMA, even some boxing too. I mean, just look at it, just driving around, what this sport has done. I mean, every fucking street corner now has a karate or an MMA or kickboxing. I mean, they're popping up everywhere. So that's why I think they're putting those kind of fighters on the Fox card.
Yeah, and realistically, if you're gonna, kind of put a fighter out there as a role model for your kids, I don't know about Nate Diaz, but I mean, he's a good kid. He really does. He works hard. Yeah, I'm sure if you're a parent, you can probably do it on your fingers. But right. Benson Henderson is the guy I was actually going to bring up. Ben Henderson is about as hardworking, a good, honest, kind of faithful guy as you're going to find, and they're kind of putting him out there and saying this is one of our champions that you can be proud of and all that. So speaking of Ben Henderson, he's in the main event. He's fighting Gilbert Melendez. He is a favorite in the fight, coming in minus 260 at the betting line. He is he's facing a Gilbert Melendez here, who may be the best 155-pounder he's faced yet as champion. There's been a lot of talk about Gilbert Melendez being the best pound-for-pound 55er for years now, and just hasn't really been put in a position to sort of back up that talk. So what do you think about this fight? And first, give me your thoughts on Gilbert Melendez, and then let's talk about the fight.
El Nino, he's been watching him to Strike Force going up there, and he had some good fights with Thomson, and he was a champion, a great fighter. He has a real, he's one of these guys that have different game plans, kind of like Jon Jones. I'm not saying that's to that caliber, but I'm saying he has a different aspect where he when he comes in, his game plan is different pretty much almost all the time. Good stand-up guy, good wrestling skills, and we really get to see what he's made of coming over and heading straight for Henderson for a title fight, which I think is great. Champion versus champion, and I think he might even be carrying his belt to the ring on Saturday. I know they told him he could, so that will be something to see if he does. I mean, it really portrays the champion versus champion, and those guys coming over from Strikeforce, man, have really been putting on some shows. So I expect to see that same Gilbert Melendez, and I think you're right. It's for Ben Henderson. It's probably his toughest matchup to date, in my opinion.
And I wanted to kind of get more into this. I wanted to write a piece. I haven't got to it yet. Really, Melendez is fighting for a lot. I mean, he's fighting for himself, obviously, and the ability to unify the belts and be a UFC champion. But on a larger level, he's fighting, the scrap pack, as it were, Cesar Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Those guys are kind of on a little bit of a losing streak when it comes to title fights. Jake Shields lost to GSP. Nick Diaz lost to GSP, and Nate Diaz lost to Benson Henderson. So he's kind of a little bit defending, the pride of the scrap pack and Cesar Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, which is kind of on its way down. I don't know how much he's actually a Cesar Gracie. I know they're all friends. He has his own training center, but I think he's kind of defending that thing. And the knock on Melendez, which really is no fault of his own, is he really hasn't faced the great caliber of fighters that Benson Henderson has fought, and what a lot of people have said that I've read is they cannot pick Melendez because they said I just can't pick a guy to win the UFC title his first time out that's lost to Josh Thomson, which is kind of a little bit of an indictment on Josh Thomson, who's a pretty legit guy. But in his last couple fights, he won against Thomson. A lot of people, Larry Pepe included, thought that he lost that fight. Beat Jorge Masvidal, beat Kawajiri, beat Aoki, beat Thompson, beat Ashita, beat Rodrigo Dam. So, I mean, those aren't household names. So is this a bigger jump up in competition for Benson Henderson, or is it a bigger jump up in competition for Gilbert Melendez?
Oh, definitely for Melendez, I think. And moving over from Strikeforce, I mean, the talent in that, and I mean, as you can see, he's fought Thomson 3 times, and why is that? Not only did they put on a great fight, but the talent and over there wasn't as strong. So, Thomson just came back. It was like a running circle. And whoever was the number 1 contender at the time, he did fight, and he pretty much did beat and so I think it's definitely a step up for Gilbert.
All right, so let's ask the question, the only question that matters. Who you got?
Man, that's a good question. I've been thinking about this one for the last couple of days. I think it's going to go to decision, and I'm not sure who I'm picking to win on this one. I'm really confused about it. Uh, but I'm gonna go with Henderson just because of one reason, and that's with the experience and with the recent fights that he's had, has really trained him or to be with this match. And I think he'll just be just a tad bit too much for Melendez. But if Melendez wins, man, it wouldn't catch me off guard at all. So.
Well, yeah, and what Benson Henderson is doing, I'm taking Benson Henderson as well. But what he's starting to do now, which might be much to the chagrin of his fans and all the fans of MMA, is he's really starting to carve out a George St. Pierre-like career where he's just physically dominant to everyone that he fights, which would make it very interesting to see him up to 170, which he's talked about, and fight GSP. But he's starting to get this thing where he just just his physicality is too much for any of his opponents to deal with, and that's really what ultimately leads him to victory. And I think that's what will lead him to victory here. I think that Melendez brings a lot to the table. I just don't think that what Melendez does well can overcome just Benson Henderson's ability to just be a better athlete than his opponents at this stage in the game. I think he GSPs the fuck out of Melendez and probably goes all 5 rounds and gets a decision. All right. Up next, let's talk about, again, this card is unofficially deemed Strikeforce versus the UFC. So up next, the fight that we've been waiting for a while was supposed to actually happen on a Strikeforce canvas way back when. Frank Mir is fighting Daniel Cormier, so a lot has changed for Frank Mir, which I wrote about on Cage Wall. You can read about that. Frank Mir's gotten a new camp. He's training at Jackson's now, so he's training with the aforementioned Travis Brown. He's training with Bones Jones. He has Greg Jackson in his corner, and for me, the biggest thing that's really been an issue for Frank Mir has been the mental game over the years. Smart guy, tends to overthink things a bit, and it's tough when you want to do your training and you're the smartest guy in the room. So now at Jackson's, he is one of the smartest guys in the room, but no longer the guy that, just kind of can just say, I know more about MMA, so fuck all of you, this is what we're doing. At Jackson's, he's got to play ball a little bit. So, how do you see this fight playing out, and what are your thoughts on Mir's move to Jackson, first of all?
I think it was a great move for him. We actually were talking about this. I think that with his mental game, it's really helped him, and I think even training has probably got him refocused on his career because, again, another guy that that had the world in front of him, and then he had the motorcycle wreck, which set him back, and then he was kind of all over the place. We've seen some great Mir, we've seen some lousy Mir, but he wasn't talking too much this fight. I mean, he was talking a little bit, but it just seems like he's kind of a different focused person. And overall, I think it's probably the best move he's made in his career is move over to Jackson's, and we'll see how it affects him. Saturday night, we'll really see how he reacts to the whole camp and to his new coach. So we'll see how that goes.
What I'll be interested to see is Greg Jackson in his corner because, I think that if they put a game plan together, it's not going to be a bunch of smoke and mirrors. It's going to be about getting, and I wrote about this in Cage Wall, it's going to be about getting Mir to everything he does. If I know Greg Jackson, which I've been watching fights for a while, I think I do, everything that Mir does is going to bring him back to jiu-jitsu, which is something he kind of got away from. I mean, a lot of these guys, jiu-jitsu is not easy. You can say what you want to about it. It's not easy, no matter how good you are at jiu-jitsu, to get another grown man to submit. It's not a very easy thing to do. And I think that for Mir, he fell in love with knocking guys out. It was easier than submitting them, so he's just like, I'm just going to stand and bang with these guys. He does not want to do that with Daniel Cormier, because although I think the gap between Mir may be a better striker than Cormier. I'm not sure if he is, but he may. But the gap between them striking-wise is not as large as the gap between them jiu-jitsu-wise. So if you're Mir, everything is a means to an end, and the end is jiu-jitsu. So what are your thoughts on I'll ask you 2 questions. One is this the best Frank Mir we're ever going to see based on his corner, his strategy, his mental game? Is this the best Frank Mir we're ever going to see? And if it is the best Frank Mir we're ever going to see, is that going to be good enough to beat Daniel Cormier?
You know, it's a step up for Cormier. It really is in competition. Yeah, he's fought Bigfoot and he knocked him out, but you know, we're probably going to see the best Frank Mir that we've seen in a while. Yes. Before he had his accident, I think that was one of his best times too, when he was champ. But I think really that we'll probably see the best Frank Mir that we have seen in a long, long time. And with Daniel, I think, you know, he's been talking a lot. They became kind of John each other, but it's really been Daniel telling him in the weigh-ons he's way past his time. This is it for him. And then even the interview I was watching earlier, where Daniel said he was going to win, and they asked Frank Mir what he thought, and he was like, "I'm just going to take his arm home." And you know, Daniel, you can't break my arm, and you can say you're breaking my arm, but you just can't break my arm. Well, I don't know if he's watched some of the matches of Frank Mir, but the kid has some fucking legit jiu-jitsu, and he can fucking break your arm probably with pretty easily if he gets you caught. And that's what he even said. He was like, if you don't tap quick enough, I'm breaking it. So, and he can. So I'm interested to see how this is going to play out, because it seems like Frank Mir is just in a different mental state to me, and I like it. I'm actually, the last couple of weeks, I'm actually grown to become a little bit better fan of Frank Mir.
Yeah, and he is he's coming in as an underdog, so kind of a big one. Cormier is actually a bigger favorite than Benson Henderson is. So I guess, I don't know, man. For me, I want to know what Greg Jackson's going to mean to Frank Mir. Is he going to calm him in the corner? Is he going to, you know, again, when you're Frank Mir and you're such a bright guy, when you go into your corner between rounds, it's all bullshit you're being talked to in your opinion. You're just kind of hearing shit, and, you know, your dad might be there or whoever. It's important what they're saying, but again, you still think you're the smartest guy in your camp. So what are they saying to you that's really hitting home? Whereas Greg Jackson takes a different approach. He comes there, he talks to you, calms you down, tries to get through to you, get your attention, and kind of get you to stay the course, you know, to a certain extent. I mean, for Christ's sakes, Greg Jackson even had Melvin Guillard staying on game plan for a while, and that guy's as flaky as they get. So what
you know, I'm surprised he's such a big favorite, because if we looked at his fights, I mean, he beat Starring, Barnett, Silva, Munson, and Cole. And if we go to look at the other side with Mir, he lost to Dos Santos, but he beat Nogueira, he beat Nelson, which is big because Nelson's been on a pretty good run too. Filipovic, and he had a loss to Carwin. But I mean, if you look at it, who's fought the bigger talent there? You know, now are we saying is an age a factor or what it is? But actually, Daniel Cormier is a year older than Frank Mir, so I'm really surprised that Daniel's such a huge favorite.
Well, I think a lot of that goes into who Cormier trains with, but you know, because by all accounts, everyone's saying he trains with Kane, keeps up with Kane. Kane says the toughest fights he ever gets into are in sparring. Daniel says the same. So, I mean, a lot of guys say a lot of shit. So, I think that, for me, I think Mir's got a good camp. I mean, obviously, him sparring with Travis Brown is not akin to Daniel sparring with Kane, but at the same time, you know, Frank rolls a little bit with Jones. So, I mean, he's in a really good camp. I just think that, for me, I'm very interested to see where Frank Mir's at mentally and what he thinks, you know, if he starts to get over analytical, if he has a tough first round, does he go in a tank? Cormier called him a front runner, called him a quitter. So what do you think about all that? And at the end of the day, let's just again, talk about the only thing that matters, who you got.
You know what it comes down to? You know, if Daniel does get on the ground with him, if he takes him down, I don't know how great his skills are defending off submissions, but they better be at the top. I hope he has to work on this, but I'm going to call this, man, and I might eat crow, but I'm going to say Frank Mir wins this fight by submission. That's what I'm calling. And I might eat a crow, and then people might talk shit, might say I'm crazy. But I think Jackson is going to bring a new game into him, and I could be completely wrong, but this is what I think. I think he brings out a new game in Frank Mir. If it goes to the ground, look for Daniel to be tapping.
Yeah, I certainly don't have your balls when it comes to this pick because I want to pick Frank Mir too because I don't know, man. I don't know what Cormier is going to bring to the table that Brock Lesnar didn't bring in terms of wrestling. He kind of weathered that storm. Now, listen, it's a tale of two Lesnars there because you can either go, well, he tapped out Lesnar the first time they fought, or he got fucking dismantled by him. So it can go either way. So I think that yeah, man, Cormier is a legit dude. I think he's headed for the 205-pound division. I don't really know what this is a really interesting fight to me because we've talked about this in the past. Cormier most likely will fight Jones should he go to 205. Jones will most likely fight Velasquez if he goes to heavyweight. And, it just seems like they're training with the guys. There's a lot of scouting being done by potentially future opponents. If Jon Jones will certainly be paying very close attention to the Daniel Cormier-Frank Mir fight because he may end up fighting Cormier. So, I don't know, man. I'm going to take Cormier just because I feel like his star's on the rise. I kind of buy into that shit sometimes when I shouldn't, but I like Frank Mir a lot, man. I think his head's there. I just think that maybe 2-3 years ago, had he hooked up with Jackson's, his first fight out of the Jackson camp, I just don't think that he'll be ready yet. I just think there's too many old habits that he won't be able to break in time to be successful over Daniel Cormier. All right, up next, a sort of a grudge match between Nate Diaz and Josh Thomson. Josh Thomson, of course, has a win over Gilbert Melendez in the past. Friend of Nate Diaz, Scrap Pack member. They're fighting at 155. Josh Thomson is a underdog. He is actually one of the weirdly he's had a weird career, man. He was in the UFC early on, but he kind of has been in Gilbert Melendez's shadow, been kind of right there with him, but really never got the props he probably deserves. And he's a lot more serious of a guy than he's probably getting credit for here in this fight with Nate Diaz. Because he's not known by all MMA fans, I think he's probably being dismissed in this fight, but he could give Nate Diaz a hell of a fight, right?
Yeah, I think, absolutely he can give him a great fight. And he's given Melendez, he beat Melendez, lost to him 2 other times, but those were damn close fights. So, he has the skill set to definitely win this fight. He's lost 2 of his last 3 though. And his last win was against KJ Nunes, and we saw Nunes did in his debut. So it's going to be interesting, man. These two are both brawlers, and it's going to could be a fight of the night right here.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, they're definitely going to come in there. They're going to put on a show. It's kind of like you said, it's a sleeper fight, kind of a got some fight of the night potential. They actually kept their shit together in the weigh-ins, which kind of surprised me. I figured this was destined to be some headbutting and some Dana splitting dudes up, and it didn't really pan out like that. They were just kind of. Nate actually had a little trouble making weight, so I don't know if his head was focused on that. He ultimately made it, but it was a situation where they were staring at the scale forever and just kind of waiting for shit to settle or whatever the case may be. Him to hold his breath for a second or some shit, because he finally made weight. I think this is going to be a lot of fireworks. This is one of those fights where the 2 guys fighting both think they strike better than the other guy, and they're probably going to stand. I'd like to see Nate get, much like Frank Mir, I'd like to see Nate get back to the old days when he was submitting dudes out and putting them in, triangles and flicking off the camera. I think there's certain guys who can apply their jiu-jitsu to MMA, and they have a very aggressive jiu-jitsu game. His brother Nick's the same way. He's kind of gone away from it. Guys want to stand and bang, man. I think they think that's what the key to putting on a show is. I don't know if that's part of because Dana kind of created a monster with that shit or what, but I'm very interested to see this fight, and I want to know who you got.
Wow. I think it's going to be a brawl, but I think if it goes to the ground, jiu-jitsu rise, Diaz has it, and even the boxing skills, I think it's probably going to be a little bit too much for Josh, and I'm going to take Diaz on this one.
I'm going to kind of go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that I just think, I don't know, I'm not feeling Diaz on this one, man. I think Josh Thomson, he's in his backyard, man. He's looking to make a big splash. I think that he really has got that strike force hunger. He just seems like a guy that's kind of flying a little bit under the radar, getting written off a little bit, and this is really a spot for him to make a big fucking name for himself. I don't think anyone who gives a shit about the UFC that doesn't do what you or I do, or any of the other MMA journalists, has a goddamn clue who Josh Thomson is. None of them. And I think that this is his chance to give himself a name. I think Nate Diaz is kind of disregarding him a little bit. He just thinks that it's kind of a foregone conclusion he's going to win. And if we're saying that Gilbert Melendez may be the top dog over in the scrap pack, which you can argue it, then Josh Thompson's beat him. So I don't know, man. I like Diaz's reach here, but I just think that Thompson's going to come in there. Honestly, dude, I think Thompson's going to come in there and flatten him, dude. Put him on his ass, knock him out.
Really?
Yeah, I'm expecting a lot from Josh Thompson in this one, man. I think he's really looking to put on a show. All right, next up. So I'll be out there on that limb, dude. I'm in the wind right now. I'm on the end, so it's shaky as shit. I don't know if it can support my weight, so we'll see. I'm on a limb for sure. We'll see if it can support me. All right, up next is a fight that we kind of fell into. Everybody's new favorite, and again, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. I hit him up on Twitter today. The guy that has been driving the Jordan Mean train for a minute. I said a couple of months. He said a couple years. Our good friend Adam Martin of Sportsnet and many other venues. Again, follow Adam at Adam Martin on Twitter. He's a stud, Adam is, in terms of knowing about fights and knowing about the UFC. He's been touting Jordan forever. So we kind of fell into this Matt Brown-Jordan Mean fight. Originally it was supposed to be Matt Brown and Dan Hardy. Hardy has a wolf heart. So, if you're going to be diagnosed with a condition, man, having a wolf heart, I'm sure he's not stoked about it, but it sounds pretty fucking gangster. I think that Matt Brown and Jordan Mean is going to be a hell of a fight. What do you think?
Yeah, this fight's going to be good, and you're right. We did hear from Adam that this kid was legit, and it is, man. He's in his last 5 fights he's had a loss, and that was to Tyron Woodley, and we saw what he did when he came in the UFC. So that was a split decision, no doubt, with Tyron Woodley, and but he just handled Dan Miller pretty handily, and he's pretty much. He's got heavy hands. He's a TKO artist, and the kid's legit. And then you got Matt Brown, who is no joke himself. He's got great jiu-jitsu. He's got great ground game, and he has a great stand-up too. So it's going to be a stand and bang, and that's what it is. It's going to be a stand-up. I honestly think these two are going to stand right there and bang it out, and it's going to be a fucking interesting fight.
Yeah, Matt Brown's got a little Clay Guida in him in that, in his last couple of fights, he's been putting the fucking brakes on the old hype train, because after Mike Swick knocked Demarcus Johnson's ass out, he was coming in, man, riding high, cloud 9 type shit, and Matt Brown went ahead and ended his night for him relatively early in the second round. Yeah. Same thing with Stephen Thompson. Stephen Thompson had that knockout head kick win. Here we go again. Here comes Matt Brown to say, let's go ahead and stop all this Wonder Boy bullshit and slow things down a bit. And so there's two guys that he Clay Guida'd in a big way. So Jordan Mean is cut from that same cloth, man. There's a lot of hype behind this kid right now. He is like, kind of the he's got a little Roy McDonald to his hype machine right now. So he's beaten, like you said, he beat Zarumskis, Berkman, he beat Riggs, he lost to Woodley, beat Cyborg Santos, beat Forrest Petts, and we got word from Adam that was just a hell of a fight, man. He went in there and blasted Petts out, and then did the same thing to Dan Miller, who's nobody knocks Dan Miller out, and he went in there and took Miller right out. So I don't know, man. Let's cut to the chase here and see who you got, but this to me. There's a lot of fireworks on this main card.
Uh, yeah, man. There's a ton of fireworks, and the kid's only 23 too. And Jordan, and that surprised me because he has a shitload of fights for being
35 fights. 35
yeah,
fights for a young kid.
So that kid stays like he has to stay in shape in his training camps. I'm surprised he's fucking not dead yet, having that many fights at 23. And but I'm interested to see it because these two, like you said, man, they're some knockout artists. They got some heavy hands. They'll surprise you. So, damn, I don't even know who to call. I'm a Matt Brown fan, but this kid Jordan has got my eyes twitching, man. And shit, you gonna make me pick? Because I'm gonna have to.
Hold on. I am gonna make you pick, but I guess let's spin it forward this way. The short notice fight.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that with Jordan? I mean, did he have to take the fight?
Well, obviously, it doesn't give a shit. He's fought fucking 35 times. He's 23. Fights like every other fucking day. So, obviously, that doesn't bother him too much. And when you have, I guess when you have the skills and you have some good stand-up, that you can walk into a fight and being confident and take it. But just based on that, let's go with
well, real quick, before you
Brown.
make your pick. All right, so we got Brown. But what I was going to ask you is, all things being equal, would you prefer, what do you think affects a fighter more? Taking a short notice fight or having a late opponent change? Because Matt Brown's been getting ready for Dan Hardy, so, he's had a little bit of time.
But that's good, though, because Dan Hardy's a fucking stand-up guy, too, right? So he doesn't like to go to the ground much. So they swapped one for one, really. If you think about it, you traded a puncher for a puncher. So I'm sure your game isn't going to change that much. So that's good for Brown and for Jordan. So I'm gonna go with Brown on this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Jordan because I think that I just think it's his time. I mean, I know he's young. I just think that he's on the rise. I don't like him here taking a short notice fight. You kind of have to. I mean, he worked his way onto the main card. So I don't know, man. I'm not crazy about it, but I just think it's his time. He's a young kid, so if it's not his time, he'll get another time. But I am worried about a guy like Matt Brown. There's certain guys in the UFC who are kind of gatekeeper types. Matt Brown's one of them.
Let me ask you a question though.
All right.
That you just mentioned that because he's on a 4-fight win streak. What do you do with Matt Brown if he wins?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question because he's a 170-pounder. He's beaten Swick. He will have beaten Jordan. I don't know, man. I don't know what's next for him. I don't know who the guy is at 170. I mean, do you give him a top 10 fight?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, that's 5 fights, man. And like you said, he's a brawler. So, and when I say that, he brings it every single time he's in the ring. So you got to give him something good if he wins this fight. You got to.
Well, and let's assume this guy is still on the roster. I don't know if he's been cut yet. Speculation is that he will be cut. What about throwing him a bone if he beats Jordan? Go ahead and give him Nate Marquardt.
Yeah, that would be a good fight. Yeah, actually, that's pretty damn good. I'd like to see that one actually because Marquardt needs somebody to again challenge him because his last fight wasn't so great. So I think that'd be the turning point for both of them.
And you know what, dude? I don't want to jump the gun here on a finish strong, but can I make a comment here about, because I think I saw somewhere Tarek Saffiedine's fighting Robbie Lawler. Can I not get a fight between two guys who I could have seen fight in Strikeforce? Give me, if you're gonna bring the Strikeforce guys to UFC, make them fight UFC fighters I could have seen this fight in Strikeforce.
Yeah.
That's neither here nor there, but I mean, what are your thoughts on seeing two guys that could have fought Strikeforce fighting in the UFC?
Like if that's their first fight coming over, I don't think I'm not too big of a fan because you're right, we could have seen it over in Strikeforce. But if it's like a second or third fight down, then yeah, if they both have won, then it becomes irrelevant. But initially, if you bring them two over and you put them together, you're not giving us anything that's out of the norm. And usually when they're bringing these guys over from the Strikeforce, they're giving them good, tough competitors, and they've been measuring up good. So that's what I want to see.
I guess for me, I'd just rather, so 7, 8, 9 in the division is Campman, Safadine, Lawler. If I could have seen Safadine and Lawler fight in Strikeforce, just give me Safadine, Campman. Why is that so hard?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to take Jordan and you're taking Brown, so there's that. All right, next up. Let's go through the rest of the card. Really kind of, I don't want to say abstractly, but looking at the card, interestingly enough, I mean, I don't know if these guys are trying to just get their goddamn Twitter followers up or what, but a lot of guys that aren't prelim fighters are fighting on the prelims. You know, we got Miles Jury and Ramsey Najim is pretty high up on the card, interestingly enough. But Francis Carmont, Lorenz Larkin, I like that fight. That's a good one. Prelim fight. Chad Mendez and Darren Elkins, I like that fight. Darren, oh, Darren, your goddamn last name busted my balls. Yama is fighting Joseph Benavidez, which is crazy that Benavidez is fighting on the prelims. So, what of those fights do you like, and what's with the guys that are main card fighters fighting on the prelims?
Dude, Team Alpha Male is fucking representing on the undercard, no doubt. Even that TJ Dillashaw fight, man, he's been fighting like pretty quick too because he's been handling business. Yeah. Dude,
You think these guys are just trying to get on a California card?
Well, you know, it's easier for them because they're right there, and yeah, because it brings fans into that to that forum, right? Like you got Team Alpha Male that's big there, even Melendez and all those guys, and Diaz, California kids. So, you know, when you bring your hometown or even your home state people, it brings in more crowd. So, you know, that's what they want to jump on. But you're right. The fight, the Mendez fight, the Lorenz fight, like it's a good undercard, man. I'm going to be interested to see it because there's some really fucking good fights on there.
Yeah, and I think that what's interesting is if you look at the lines for these fights, all the alpha male guys, not the lowest favorite is TJ Dillashaw. He's minus 280. But both Benavidez and Mendez are both minus 500, you know, or so. So, I mean, you could tell they kind of took the fights like, okay, who do you got? It's in California. Just throw a guy at me. It's almost like, you know, they're fighting on back in the old pro wrestling days. They're fighting a guy and they're, you know, that they're supposed to beat, kind of a thing. Just like you don't want to call anybody a warm-up fight in the UFC, but or tune-up fight, but it just seems like they're just trying to get some work in, man. When you're minus 500, you're getting some work in, right? Or you're not fighting a real guy, not in your world.
Yeah, they just keep you fresh.
So what about that? What about that card interests you, the undercard? What fights most?
Man, I don't know. It's a toss-up between the Larkin Francis fight and probably
that Roger Bowling Anthony Njokuani fight interests me a lot.
Yeah, that's another one. Like there's like two or three that undercard that catch my attention that could really catapult some cats. You know what I mean? Like I think there are going to be some good fights in it, and they could become main card fighters on the next one.
All right, we haven't done this in the past, but I'm gonna put you out on a limb here because I was out on a limb earlier. Who's looking at bonus money?
Frank Mir.
Okay, submission of the night.
Yep. Oh. Diaz Thomson fight of the night.
Okay.
Matt Brown knockout of the night.
Really?
Yep.
I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna disagree with you. Okay, so submission of the night. I'm going with an alpha male guy just because they're huge favorites.
You bastard.
So I'm gonna go with Dillashaw.
That's a good one too. That's a good one, man. Fuck you.
All right, knockout of the night. I'm going Lorenz Larkin. And fight of the night, I'm going the number one fight, Henderson Melendez.
Really?
Yeah. So what we do horribly on this podcast is track the shit that we say. So I'm gonna go back and kind of like say who picked who and then also put
Yeah, because if we were taking count because that last fucking prediction I had last week, dude, I couldn't have been fucking more wrong. Motherfuckers were eating dust. Like, it made me look bad.
Dude, let me tell you something. If the state of Vegas, like if the state of Las Vegas financially was dependent on everybody that bet on Uriah Hall, believe me, there would have been a new casino going up on Monday based on everybody that would have picked Uriah Hall and lost their fucking ass. So I think that you're in probably some good company picking Uriah Hall. All right, man, we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. Let's go ahead and get on to our finish strong. I'm going to let you take the finish strong first this time. Go ahead.
Finish strong. Man, I have a couple ones, but I think I'm going to go with Daniel Cormier. Here's after I saw the interviews tonight, you know you want to hype yourself up, and you got a big fight coming over for Strikeforce. You're the heavyweight champ in Strikeforce, but you are kind of moving up a class and fighting Frank Mir. And what I don't like to see, what kind of turned me off, is coming over there and telling somebody how they can dictate or not able to do something when obviously he's been proven that he can do it. It's out of respect. And these guys coming over, most of them been very humbled and greatly appreciated that they're in the UFC and had the opportunity, and they've taken it. It seems to me Daniel is not taking that same approach. It doesn't seem like he's humbled. He really has a little bit of a high ego, and I want him to see he needs to be grounded. You're now in the biggest organization in the world. There is tougher competition. Yeah, you're undefeated, but you're about to hit a higher class of competition, and I think it is for the fans and for himself. I think there needs to be a little bit of respect for the MMA game, and also for your opponent, and that's where I'm leaving my finish strong with.
Well, you don't play that disrespect for you are like a goddamn baseball purist when it comes to respecting the game, man. You're like Carlton Fisk fighting Deion Sanders at home plate. You remember that shit, dude? I'm going to tell you the story if you don't remember it, or for the fans that don't remember it. When Deion Sanders was a rookie, or early in his career, this dude used to come to the plate, and with his bat, he would draw a dollar sign into the dirt. Because that's what was important to him, fuck it. So Carlton Fisk would have none of that shit. He stood up, kicked dirt on the dollar sign. Sanders, drew it again, and next thing you know, these two are going at it at home plate. That's Carlton Fisk. You're the Carlton Fisk of the MMA purity. Yeah, okay, so my finish strong is about George St. Pierre. I think that it is time for you, George St. Pierre, to strike while the iron is hot. Johny Hendricks is a real guy, dude. He's going to pose a lot of problems for you. I would be excited to watch you fight Johny Hendricks. I would be more excited to watch you fight Anderson. So I think that it is time for you to quit the bullshit. If it's at 175, 180, Anderson will make it. He's just trying to get paid. Anderson is a smart guy. He's been coming after you for a reason. He's tired of fighting. He doesn't want to fight Chris Weidman. He doesn't want to, he doesn't want to be super challenged and not be super paid, and that's the reality of fighting Chris Weidman. Your risk is higher than your reward. So if I was GSP, listen, man, if you fight Anderson Silva and get the shit beat out of you, you'll join a long list of guys who have fought Anderson Silva and had the shit beat out of him. So there's no shame in that. So fight him. If you are defeated by him, you pick your ass up, man. You're like a cartoon character. Collect all your bones and your various Tom and Jerry parts. Walk away and put yourself back together. Go back to the drawing board like the Wile E. Coyote, and then you still get to fight Hendricks. So, I think that's the way that George St. Pierre needs to approach the rest of his career. He needs to, if he's talking about retiring, then give the fans, give Dana, give everybody what they want. They want to see you fight Anderson Silva. Most of us want to see Silva defeat you and then fight Jon Jones next. So just make it happen, man. Quit fighting it. You're a hell of an athlete. You can probably give Anderson Silva a hell of a fight. So make it happen. All right. So
do I get the rebuttal on that?
Please.
What if I said don't fight him? Protect your legacy like Henderson and Silva is. Anderson Silva knows he can beat you. He's bigger than you. He has a longer reach than you. He has longer legs than you. He has a better, probably well-rounded game than you do. So don't take the fight. That's the devil's advocate. Then I'm gonna come back and say, I'd fucking pay tickets to go see that fight.
Everybody would. Everybody that doesn't think St. Pierre. Dude, listen, at the end of the day, it's the God's honest truth. You can say what you want to about George St. Pierre fighting Anderson Silva. Pretty much everybody would rather see Anderson Silva and GSP fight than GSP and Hendricks fight.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely they would.
So let's make it happen, man. Let's do a little history. Let's make these super
Oh yeah,
fights
like I said,
happen.
I'd fucking fly down to Dallas to go watch that fight. Absolutely, I would.
Yes.
I'd got me some goddamn tickets and try to get as close as possible, and I'd watch that fight and enjoy every second of it. But I don't think it's a win-win situation inside the ring for him. Financially, it's a fucking huge win because those dudes are going to get paid. Like that's like after the fight, I just fucking throw my gloves in the ring and just fucking give my arms like this and be like, I'm done. I'm out. You can catch me on the fucking private island I'm about to buy.
Yeah, exactly. Because if those two guys fight, it's not the first thing. So tomorrow GSP comes out and says, I want to fight Anderson Silva next. The very first order of business for the UFC is where can we put these guys to fight to maximize our earning potential? Because whatever the number is.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be the highest pay-per-view and the highest venue ever of all time. It's going to set records. And pay if you that son of a bitch, if the pay-per-views went from $59.95 to $195, God damn it, I'd purchase it. I'd have to spend the money. I want to watch the fight. So
yeah.
Shit.
And that's a fight that you could literally promote by itself.
Oh, you could just have those two guys sit in front of the mic and not say a fucking word, and it would still sell.
No, I mean you could have that fight be the only fight, and people would still.
Oh yeah.
They could go boxing style.
Yeah, absolutely, you could. Absolutely.
So I think, honestly, man, if you guess what, GSP, you got your ass whipped by Matt Serra and didn't get half of what you're going to get to fight Anderson Silva. So shit, I mean, it's not like you've never lost. So go in there, man, make it happen. All right, so a lot's coming up. TJ, what is on the horizon other than these fights that we've talked about that interest you the most? Obviously, we got Bones and Sonnen next week. We'll talk about that obviously at length, but in the near future, what are you most excited for?
I don't know, man. You got some good fights coming up. Rockhold, we get to see him in the UFC coming up. What's his name? Philippu's fighting Jacare. That's coming up. You know, they got some good fights lined up. Shit. And the next coming months, you know, this is when they're kind of spread out. The summer's coming up, so it's kind of spread out. And then bam, 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 we're going to get hit with some fucking nice ones coming up through the summer. So they're lining themselves up good. I'm interested to see Rockhold fight Vitor. That's going to be, I think, an interesting fight. So I'm good to go with that one. And let's see what else is there. 160's coming up. Velasquez back in the ring against Bigfoot too. Hopefully it might last longer this time. I think Velasquez is just in a fucking different state of mind, man, right now, and he's fucking on a tear. So we got good fights coming up. I'm interested to see some up-and-comers too. And so fucking summertime's almost upon us, and I think that's the best time for the UFC. Because what's better than being in Vegas in a fucking swimming pool with all the hot women, and then you walk across the street and fucking watch a fight that night?
Yeah, I agree. And we're, we got a lot of things planned for this summer as well. We're going to be more content on Cage Wall. We're trying to expand our network in terms of who we have on the show, who shows we go on. We got big plans. We got big plans for things we want to do. We are both still planning, last I checked, to have our asses in Vegas 4th of July weekend, so you'll see us there. And, we're really trying to do a lot more stuff with the podcast and really get out there, have some more fan interaction, and really take this thing to the next level. So, with that, we will end our Peaches and Herb reunited podcast. It felt so good. We'll end this one as we end them all by telling you guys to keep watching the fights. Keep your hands up and your chin down. This is the Hot Cage Podcast.